Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome to our weekly talk show. I'm happy to see all of you here. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you, and I hope your Ramadan is going well. We're past the halfway mark, so inshallah, we appreciate and soak in every moment that we can get in these last nights, inshallah. And now I'd like to welcome our guests. Inshallah, we have Dr. Rose Aslan. I'm going to introduce them one by one. Dr. Rose Aslan, and we have Amira Mohtheshum, and we have Naseeha, Hussain, and Mufti Ibrahim Qureshi. Those are our guests for tonight. We're so excited that they agreed to be on our panel of seekers of knowledge. Really, the intention for this evening, we wanted to inspire people by allowing these scholars and students of knowledge to share their experiences of what motivated them to study, how it's impacted their life, so as to hopefully, inshallah, inspire in us that will and that desire to continue. Islamic education is a lifelong, inshallah, journey. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you in that journey, inshallah. So first, we'd like to introduce Dr. Rose Aslan. She teaches courses on global religions, the Abrahamic tradition. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Rose, nice to see you. Nice to see you, yes, now you're unmuted. I love your background, mashallah, it's beautiful. Alhamdulillah, I'm gonna read your bio. So she teaches on global religions, the Abrahamic traditions, and comparative focus, and Islam. She's an interfaith activist, as well as a scholar of Islam and religious studies. She received her PhD in Islamic studies from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. She has her MA in Arabic and Islamic studies from the American University in Cairo, and her BA in Near Eastern and Religious Studies from the University of British Columbia, mashallah. She's fluent in Arabic. She is currently pursuing several different directions of research, all of which are connected through her interests in the construction and perception of sacred space, material culture, ritual and pilgrimage in medieval and contemporary Islamic texts. Dr. Aslan has lived and studied in Egypt for 5 years and has also lived in Turkey, Iran, Iraq, and Armenia. So mashallah, a breadth of knowledge you bring to our panel tonight. Dr. Rose, welcome.
Yeah, thank you for having me tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Alhamdulillah, it's our pleasure. Thank you. And next we have Amira Mohtheshum. She's born and raised in the Valley. She got her bachelor's from CSUN. Assalamu alaikum, Amira, how are you?
I'm good.
Nice to see you. Welcome, welcome.
So good to see you guys.
Very nice to see you. She has her bachelor's from CSUN in Recreation and Tourism Management. And since then, she's been working for Fulcrum Adventures, a leadership and team building company. She began as a facilitator and is now handling operations for the entire company. She completed the Column Summer Arabic Intensive program in Texas, and she also studied classical Arabic at Qasid Institute in Jordan. Welcome, Amira.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, mashallah. And next up, we have Naseeha Hussain, who also grew up in San Fernando Valley. Assalamu alaikum, Naseeha, how are you?
Walaikum assalam. I'm good, alhamdulillah. How are you?
Good, nice to see you, mashallah.
Nice to see you too. Nice to
see you. Welcome. So a little bit about Naseeha. She graduated from UCLA with a bachelor's degree in psychology and Arabic. She went on to gain a master's degree in religious studies at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, where her focus was on women in Muslim societies. After graduating from that university, she spent the year in Amman, Jordan at the Qasid Arabic Institute. She's currently I don't know why, that threw me off. She's currently a PhD student in the School of Religion at USC, mashallah, studying within the global Islam track. Her areas of interest include Islamic law, theology, Sufism, Islam in America, and modern understandings of the self, mashallah. Nice to have you.
Thank you.
And finally, we have Mufti Ibrahim Qureshi. He'll be joining us at 9:45, inshallah. He also has his masjid program to do, and we wanted to invite him. He's another local. And just a little bit about him. He was born in Chicago, but raised here in the San Fernando Valley. From his childhood, he has immersed himself in higher Islamic education, memorizing the entire Quran by the age of 16. And then to quench his thirst for Islamic studies, he went off to the UK, where he studied in Dar al-Ulum al-Arabiya al-Islamiyya and received his BA in Islamic theology, as well as completing his takhassus in fiqh, specializing in Islamic jurisprudence. Alhamdulillah. So welcome all of you to our panel of seekers of knowledge, mashallah. I wanted to start with you, Dr. Rose. And as I mentioned when I was introducing this panel, it's so inspiring to see people dedicating themselves to this path of Islam and Arabic and you know, being able to benefit others. And so, Dr. Rose, I wanted to start with you. And what motivated you to start your journey of education?
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. That's a great question. It's a hard one to answer in a very short amount of time, but I'll do my best. For me, it started as a very young age. I'll kind of start from when I was age of 11 when I started my spiritual journey, trying to find the meaning of life. Fast forward to college, still searching for the meaning of life. Went through many journeys until then. But it was during college I really was drawn towards the Arabic language. I was just very fascinated with it. And I was also what I would call an Orientalist. I was very interested in the whirling dervishes and everything Sufism at that time. I wasn't interested in Islam at all, actually. But so I started learning Arabic in my second year of college. I was very interested. I just was so attracted to the language. I loved hearing it. Really, I didn't know much about it. So for my study abroad, I decided that I'll go somewhere off the beaten path, somewhere that's not Paris or London where most people are going. So I decided to go to Cairo, which there was a lot of students from Georgetown University there at the time, but I was I was the only person from my university. I actually had to take a leave of absence to go there. And there I immersed myself in just the university life, which is very interesting study atmosphere there. And it was that point where I just kind of got hooked on studying everything connected to the Middle East, Islam, and Arabic. I find myself when I'm in a country, I'm really able to absorb and pick up a language. So very quickly, I was able to start speaking Egyptian Arabic and learn modern standard Arabic and Quranic Arabic. And so that's really the really brief version of what motivated me, but really I have a really unquenchable thirst for knowledge and curiosity. And once there's something I want to learn about, I make it a project to learn about. And alhamdulillah, my education, my travels have enabled me to be able to travel so much around the world, around the Middle East, because of my pursuit of knowledge. And so I feel really blessed.
That's beautiful. Wow, that's awesome, mashallah. That's amazing. Mashallah. And how about you, Amira? What triggered you? What was your motivation for starting your journey?
Yeah, I think for me, I've always had a lot of interest in kind of gathering kind of the knowledge and the basis behind a lot of things particularly like within Islam. And so from, the time that I started getting involved in youth group, maybe 14, 15 years old, I always wanted to kind of gain more knowledge and information. And so like I read a lot of books and that had kind of sparked things. But for me, the thing that really made the difference for wanting to actually go and pursue study was actually I had this very long commute. I was commuting from the Valley to the West Side like every day for a couple years, and I had about 3 or so hours in the car every day. And so I started listening to a lot of podcasts, and specifically Qalam Institute had a podcast with Sheikh Abdul Nasir Jangda, and he was talking about, it was mostly Sirah, and then after that started getting into tafsir, started getting into, just all sorts of different things. And I was just like, there's so much here, and it captivated me. And so I was like, I really want to take time to learn this because I feel like it's important, and I feel like it helped me feel full and alive. And so that was kind of the impetus behind it. And so so then I went from there, and I ended up going to Texas for a little while, and then onwards to Jordan because I was trying to kind of learn Arabic as the foundation to then go on and further Islamic studies. But subhanAllah, a commute did it for me. That was really the turning point.
Oh, that's so cool.
Very cool. Love story.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Amira. And Naseeha, how about you? What was your motivation? What triggered you to start on your journey?
Actually, I think that the credit goes to my parents on this one. I think they really stressed reading Arabic and like reading the Quran when I was younger. And I remember really, really like being fascinated that I was reading another language, but just like also not understanding it. So I was like, I need to also understand it. So when I got the ability to take a class at UCLA, when I got into UCLA and they had Arabic classes, I was like, yes, I'm going to take Arabic classes. And it was modern standard Arabic, so it's not like classical in the Quran Arabic, but it's still like a good start. And then from there, because like the degree was like, you just had to take a couple more classes to get the degree. And so it was like you take like a few Islamic studies classes and you get like a degree in Arabic. And so I was like, okay, why don't I just do that? And I remember like one of the assignments I came across the idea of the muhaddithat, and like they're the women scholars of Islam that are hadith scholars. And I had never heard about them before. They were like an amazing, there's a huge, amazing tradition within Islam of these women hadith scholars. And so I was just like boggled, like, it was like, how did I not know that they existed my whole life? And so I was like, I need to know more about Islamic tradition, Islamic history. And so that's what made me go to the University of Illinois for my religious studies degree there. And then to Qasid with Amira. I was her roommate. We were roommates. It was a good time, alhamdulillah. But yeah,
that was a surprise, right? Like, you guys, prior to getting in, I don't think either of you knew that you were both applying to this program.
We did not.
No. And we weren't even in the same program. It was like two different programs, but housed in the same area, like housed in Qasid. And then I remember I think it was a Ramadan iftar that like, she found me, like, are you going to Jordan? I was like, yeah, are you? And it was like, then we roomed together. It was amazing, alhamdulillah.
It was actually Qari Talib who had told me, like, oh, you're going to Jordan, you should talk to Naseeha because she's also going. And I was like, wait, what? And voila, we were in the same, at the same school and ended up living together. So
that is so cool. Small world, subhanAllah. That's amazing. That beautiful story. Jazakumullah khairan, guys. Dr. Rose, and how about, mashallah, your story seems so deep, and it looks like it's, for all of you, it's something that's continuing. How did it change your perspective, whether that be kind of like a life perspective or perspective on spirituality or Islam in general? How did that change things for you?
Yeah, that's also a very big question that I'll struggle to answer in a very short amount of time. How did it change my perspective? I would say what changed my perspective the most is, for me, traveling and the pursuit of knowledge. The more people I speak to, the more people I learn from, not just scholars, but just regular people, be they Muslims or anyone else. Hearing their perspective, hearing how they live their lives, just hearing everyday lives of people outside the US, really, and to be in a non-American centric context really was enlightening for me. When you grow up in this context, you don't realize there's a world outside of California, a world outside of the United States, and there is a world, and it's very different than our own, although very similar at the same time. So for me, it's a spiritual, I had various spiritual awakenings and crises at the same time. It's not like it was all just up and downhill. I had a lot of struggles. One issue I struggle with a lot is the patriarchy, misogyny, for example, in the Muslim majority world or in Muslim communities here in the United States. It's not easy to be a woman and a woman in pursuit of knowledge when often we're not given equal access to scholarship and scholars that men are. So some things have been lovely, some things have been very challenging, but most important, my perspective has just broadened. I just find myself becoming more and more open-minded, non-judgmental. I really don't believe I have the right to judge any other human being. Only Allah is the judge. And the more I study this, the more I also realize there's so much diversity within Islam. There's so many different ways to be Muslim. There's so many diverse perspectives and interpretations. And it makes me want to remain Muslim, really, because of this diversity that exists within our tradition. Whereas when I first started learning about Islam, I really saw one Islam. In Egypt, there's like Egyptian Islam, you can say. Of course, there's many manifestations of Islam within Egypt, for example, but there are certain expectations of how you live your life and how you should be as a Muslim. And I was really happy to explore different approaches and different interpretations that really broadened my mind and made me grateful to be a Muslim and a scholar of Islam, and to be able to dig into the depth of our tradition and contemporary approaches to reinterpreting the tradition in our modern context.
Wow, that's beautiful. Did you have any mentors or teachers in particular that kind of opened certain doors or you know, really had an influence on you in your studies?
Yeah, I've had quite a few because I've studied around the world. You know, I did a lot of studies in American University in Cairo, also traditional circles. I also studied in countries like Iran, Istanbul, and then I did my PhD in a secular university here in the United States in a public institution. I would say my PhD program had the most influence intellectually on me. I had a lot of professors in my master's program who taught me the basics of Islam in terms of Islamic sciences, I would say. But it was my PhD program that really trained me to be a critical and analytical thinker. And so that most recently has influenced my approach to understanding Islam and religion and life in general. But I would couple that also with teachers I've had in my past. One teacher I still have really fond memories of is Dr. Amira, who is a legal scholar in Egypt. And I was able to take a course with him when I was in Egypt. And he was a very traditional scholar, but he was very open-minded and very kind and generous with his time. And from him, I learned a lot about just being a Muslim, but also the spiritual approach to Islam. So I'd say him, coupled with some of my professors in graduate school, such as Dr. Carl Ernst, Dr. Omid Safi, and a few others who really influenced my approach to Islam.
Oh, that's beautiful. Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for sharing. SubhanAllah. It's nice to see how so many experiences and mentors and teachers can, you know, shape us and continually affect us, mashallah. And how about you, Amira? You know, how did your studies change your perspective, whether it be in a worldly or spiritual sense?
Yeah. You know, so I was just thinking when you were talking, Dr. Rose, about what you mentioned, people being just really kind and generous with their time and different people that you meet. And I feel like for me, it was amazing, subhanAllah, once I kind of like made the decision that this was something I wanted to do, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just kind of like makes the way and puts the right people in the right place at the right time to just like bring things together in a way that you couldn't have even thought were possible. And so, you know, I think personally, when I was deciding that I wanted to go and pursue this, you know, it was a little bit of a leap of faith. You know, I was quitting my job. I was just moving across the state and then, you know, across the country and then across the world. And subhanAllah, it really did teach me to just slow down and put my trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and know that like if I was able to keep my intentions pure for what it was I was doing, then I would just, the right things would happen. As long as I just kept coming back to that and pursuing that in the best way, you know, that I felt I could. And so, yes, I just was thinking of like, I wanted to, when I had arrived in Jordan and, you know, I was learning Arabic, but the Arabic, you know, is a stepping stone to wanting to do further Islamic studies, and just all of the different people who were there was just so many community members, you know, other teachers, just people willing to just step in and support in that. And I specifically was thinking of this one gentleman, Ustad Umair, who was, he was from the States and he had taught at the Institute prior to us arriving there. And he no longer taught at the Institute, but he offered like classes on Aqidah, classes on just various different things just for free in his living room. And if he would, Naseeha was there. I can see her nodding because it was just such a special, magical time of someone just being very willing to give freely of their time and, you know, of their knowledge, and just for us to sit and be together and all of that. And so, subhanAllah, just the support that came from all across the board, people sending food and the neighbors that we met in Jordan, and the support from the community back here in you know, in the Valley, just blew me away in a way that I could never have imagined or planned for. And so that really, I think, changed my perspective on everything of, you know, if there's something that you feel called towards, you can respond to that call. And so, yeah.
That's beautiful. Alhamdulillah. That's awesome. Thank you, Amira. And Naseeha, how about you? How did your studies change your life perspective?
So I think that before I got into this, I think I had a view of knowledge that it's like milestones, and like once you get your degree, you know, and like then you're fine. But that's actually like knowledge is a process, and that's one of the huge things that I learned, specifically this like PhD program that I'm doing right now, is that it's a journey and a process and not a destination, and that you're always going to be learning. Like it's like, and the more that you study, the more that you know what you don't know. And so it can be like daunting, but I think you can turn it into something that's humbling and not daunting, to realize that like you actually have very little knowledge from like all that is out there. And so I think that that's one thing that has changed my perspective on knowledge itself, of like it's not a destination, it's a process, and anybody can, and everybody should be like going on the process of seeking knowledge. Yeah,
that's amazing. And did you have any Naseeha, did you have any mentors or teachers along the way that kind of really stood out or had any special experiences?
yeah, I mean, actually I remember the Aqidah class with Ustad Umair as a very huge highlight. You never know when you actually like Amira said, when you actually like take the steps, you don't know who it is who's gonna like be in your path that's gonna help you. We didn't enroll in Ustad Umair's class. We didn't even know, like when we were going on the plane to go to Jordan, we had no idea who Ustad Umair was. But like when we got there and we found that like there's this person giving Aqidah classes, that was amazing. That was an amazing class. Like I hope I still have my notes from that. But it was one of the experiences where I was like, wow, like truly we don't know what's in our path and what's best for us. Only Allah knows. And you just have to sort of wait for it and be present for it, inshallah. So
that's amazing. It sounds like for all of you, you know, just kind of starting off and then you don't know where it's going to take you, which is beautiful, right? It is truly an exercise in trust, but also in passion. And I think that's very inspiring for all of us listening to you guys to hear that, you know, once you make that intention and you love something, you're going to just keep wanting to get better and better at it and know more and more. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make all of us, you know, make that path easy for all of us, inshallah. So next, Dr. Rose, I wanted to ask you, you know, what's one of the highlights of your educational journey? Was there a particular piece of information or experience that you had that really stands out in your mind?
Now, I have to give you a disclaimer. I started my studies in 2001. Actually, I started my studies 2001, September 1st. So that was an interesting time to start my studies of Arabic and Islam. Definitely changed everything. Now, if you ask me for the past 19 years to choose one highlight, that's almost impossible. I don't even know how to start. In terms of the highlights, some of the experiences that stand out are the most immersive ones, specifically ones where I've been blessed to be able to spend time abroad in communities. Specific examples that I've been able to go on. For example, I've been able to go to Cambridge University to something called the Cambridge Interfaith Program, where Jews, Muslims, and Christians live together for about 3 weeks to engage in dialogue, to become training in various interfaith engagement tools. This was a really powerful experience to live, eat, play, and spend so much time with these people in really close quarters. That's just one of the many examples. This is a problem, I can't just choose one. I mean, last year I was able to go to Pakistan, especially stay in Lahore to study and learn more about post-colonial Pakistan, culture, religion, and urban development, for example. I was able to go to Iran. You can see there's a mosque here in the background, in the city of Shiraz, to study Persian philosophy, literature, and Sufism. I was able to go to Istanbul to study traditional Turkish art. I was able to go to Oman to learn about Ibadi Muslims. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's really hard to just choose one highlight. It's all been such an experience that really has culminated in myself being a professor of Islam in the United States. Really, also, what's interesting is that it's, as I mentioned, it goes up and down, you know, as faith tends to do. And what's really interesting, I've had both traditional training and also secular Western training. And it's a very interesting combination, often very difficult. especially because my PhD program was a secular public institution that was often and not always the best place to be a committed Muslim and to be a person who invests in Islam when you're told that we are here to deconstruct religion. And I thought I was there to build up religion. And so often I have this internal conflict that has culminated, I guess, in the person I am now. And I can't say I've resolved this issue, but I appreciate the challenges I've been given, even though they've been very difficult at times, of keeping my faith, but also maintaining a very critical stance on religion, for example, on Islam, on the people who claim authority within Islam. So I'm really glad I have this broader perspective to look at the tradition, not just to accept religion blindly. I really believe, like as Imam Ghazali talked about, we need to use our intellect. The Quran talks about using our intellect to process and interpret our religion, to live it out. And so I'd say from my traditional and Western training, I have developed this sort of critical perspective that I'm currently in the process of developing. It's a lifelong process, as Sister Naseeha was saying. You don't stop just because you receive a PhD or you become a tenured professor, you keep on going. And so this is something that I continue to pursue my entire life.
Oh, that's really special. And I'm really, your students must be so blessed. You know, you've been able to experience life and Islam and Arabic and all of the studies that go along with it in so many different countries. So truly, it seems like living in all of those places has brought such a depth. So your students and all those that learn from you are very fortunate, and so are we, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, bringing my travel into my class is probably the funnest way to teach, for sure.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. MashaAllah. And before we go to Amira, I think we have our Mufti Ibrahim has joined us. Mufti Ibrahim, are you there? So as he joins in, inshallah, I'm going to continue with our questioning, and then inshallah we'll start with him as well. Amir, how about you? Was there any highlight that you had in your journey, whether it was a nugget of information, an experience, a teacher, anything that stood out to you?
Gosh, I feel like I was flooded with so many like moments, touchstone like snapshot moments, that it's almost hard to pinpoint just one, because there really have just been so many really amazing experiences. A couple that stood out for me was one, I think, was when I was in Texas, actually, in the very, very beginning of my journey. And I was not sure at that point if I would be going to Jordan or if I would be where I was going to be going. And I remember a small group of us girls had gotten together at the end of our program. And it was very long days. It was just like, I mean, it was really, really long days, like 8 hours of studying and then like 4 hours of homework. It was like there was no sleeping. But late night, we had gone to a park and like on a lake that we could have a bonfire, and we had a bonfire going, and it was I believe it might have been a Thursday night, early Friday morning, and I remember us sitting around and reading Surah Kaf. And that to me just was like one of those moments that was just so special and just so pivotal, even though perhaps we didn't talk about anything, or it just stood out as a really, really special moment in that early time. And I believe it was like within a day or two that the decision to keep going and to go to Jordan and do all of that came about. And I just remember the power in that moment of connecting, with the people there. That was just one that came to my mind. But also I think in Jordan, getting to visit with many different communities, kind of like Dr. Rose, you were talking about, like there's so much diversity in Islam, and it's just such a wide range of ways people practice. And so getting to see, there was a lot of different like Sufi communities there. There was, Sheikh Nu's community, which is, a Shadli community. And there was Habib Omar, who was from Yemen, who would come, and there would be like mawlids and dhikrs, and there would be like people would get together. And I just remember a lot of just very strong gatherings where I just felt like people were there because they loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and just that and for that reason alone, not for necessarily like any sort of social gain or it's not for any gain other than they just wanted, just because they loved Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much, they were there and dedicating their time and their energy and their whatever they had and really giving it all for that. And I just remember feeling really inspired by those people that I met and really, really humbled. And so, yeah, I think getting to witness that was really magical.
That's amazing. Mashallah. Barakallah feek. Mashallah. That's so beautiful. And it seems like, like you said, being with people, I think there's something very special about it. And the angels do bless the gathering in which, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioned, and also blesses the individual that steps out of their home to seek knowledge. So I think that's something that's so special. And alhamdulillah, Mufti Ibrahim just joined us. In a moment, we'll ask him. We're going to finish with Naseeha, not finish for the night, but just this path of questioning. And how about you, Naseeha? What was, a highlight in your educational journey? I know it's long for all of you guys, but just to, something that stuck out in your mind.
So, I think that, like Amira said, there's so many, things that we did when we were in Jordan that were such amazing experiences. But earlier you asked if there was a nugget of wisdom or nugget of information that we learned, and what really readily comes to my mind is what I learned maybe just 2 years ago in this specific PhD program, that it kind of changed my perspective, and I want to try to explain it and share it. So one of the things that I realized is we as Muslims in the West, and just Western society in general, is really influenced by Western history, right? And one of the really important parts of Western history has been the Enlightenment. And one of the important parts of the Enlightenment has been the idea of autonomous self, or autonomy. And so what autonomy is auto is self and nomi is law. And so autonomy is self-law. And so after reading about autonomy, and the other concept is it's autonomy versus heteronomy. Hetero meaning different and something other than yourself, and then nomi still meaning law. So law from other than yourself, which for Muslims and Christians and other religions, it's God's law. So there's this interesting perspective that it's you take your own law and you go by, you live your life like you want, you do you. We hear this all the time in advertising, or anything, just do it, you do you, it's, it's all about you. And I see it everywhere now. I see autonomy everywhere now. But so that's one of the things that I really think that is a nugget to know that, oh, we're kind of, as Muslims living in the West, we're kind of having to deal with the ideas that were already in place before we even came here to actually follow our religion, because we want to be heteronomous, right? We want to follow God's law. So it's kind of it's a fundamental clash. When you hear people saying I'm spiritual but not religious, it's kind of like that. They want to do what feels right to them, but they don't want to it's difficult because that's in the water. It's autonomy is in the water. So anyway, I don't know if I lost everybody with that.
No, that's very interesting, subhanAllah, very interesting.
But that's one of the things that has been animating me recently.
Alhamdulillah. Well, Jazakallah khairan for sharing that. That's awesome. Alhamdulillah. And thank you. So we'd like to welcome now our Mufti Ibrahim Qureshi. He's from Islamic Center of Northridge, and he's in the Valley. Welcome, Mufti Ibrahim.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Do we get to see you?
Yes.
Oh, okay, there we are. Oh, beautiful background as well. Alhamdulillah, we got that whole.
I had to copy you guys. Once I came there and I saw you guys' background, I was like, I have to get one of those.
Mashallah, welcome. So we'll ask Mufti Ibrahim a few questions since he had to wrap up his programming elsewhere, and he's, alhamdulillah, joined us with our wonderful esteemed sisters. Mufti Ibrahim, if you could tell us a little bit about what motivated you to start your journey of seeking knowledge.
So mine was probably a little less profound. After I finished memorizing the Quran, finishing my hifz, I realized, I just spent like 3 years memorizing a book that I have no idea what it means, what it's saying, and that just really struck a nerve for me. It really bothered me. But I was still kind of hesitant, because obviously the life of a scholar, of an imam, is not always an easy one. So I think I was reading. There was a story that we were reading. This is back when the British ruled India. So sorry, there was a British officer, and what happened was someone told him that, what, one of your house is about to burn down. Something, there's a fire like 2 houses down, and yours is going to be next. This is similar to there's another story similar to this, and it happened to this British officer. So he's like, don't worry, nothing's going to happen to me. It's okay. You go and do your whatever you need to do. So his servant went, and he came back after like half an hour. So he's like, man, that there's like 2 houses now engulfed in a flame. Your house is just almost, just one more house, and then yours is next. You need to come and figure things out. And he's like, nothing's gonna happen. Don't worry. So then he goes back. Then he's like, listen, the house right next to yours is on fire. If you care about yourself and your money, you need to go now. And he's like, just leave me alone. I need to finish my work. Just go, okay? He goes, and he comes back again, and he's like, yeah, the fire went out. Nothing happened to your house. So he's like, why? What? I mean, then he asked him, why were you so confident? He's like, I paid my zakat. I know I'm okay. So that really hit me, that this is a non-Muslim who didn't really believe in Islam, or maybe he did kind of sort of, but he had so much conviction in that paying his zakat would protect his wealth. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what kind of pushed me to just go and study, because a lot of times that's all you really need. I mean, the the knowledge of Islam and the prophetic sciences, it's something that's attractive to anybody and everyone. We all would love to, but we all have, depending on where we're at, and sometimes we need that push. And if we don't get it, that a lot of people are not able to go because they don't have that one push. And for me, that was that push, that story.
That's amazing, mashallah. And that's pretty interesting how you said, subhanallah, that after memorizing Quran, not knowing it was a motivating factor. Whereas for some people, they might be like maybe frustrated, and so maybe they give up at that point. But mashallah, that was one of the turning points for you, aside from this cool story, subhanallah. And Mufti Ibrahim, what about your your journey of studies? How did that change your perspective, whether that be in a worldly sense or a spiritual sense? How's that opened the eyes for you?
To be honest, the change didn't come until I came back. When you're studying, when you're over there, because we come from the Darul institutions, and over there, you're just in one environment. You're basically in a very sheltered, so to speak. We're allowed to go out and stuff for that. Our Darul was a little bit open, but you're still more or less 5-6 days a week. You're still in one place. So we don't, unfortunately, we don't have the internships. We don't have like residencies. That's a huge problem. And so when I first came back, with a lot of young scholars, we're very idealistic. We're like, okay, that's it. We're gonna come change the world. We're gonna do all these things, and then when you come back and you realize, no, that's the real world is very, very, very different. So that's a very confusing time, and I was very fortunate, very lucky that I was in Santa Clarita. That community was an amazing community. They themselves were a very small young community as well. They had just kind of started a few years earlier, and they took me under their wing, and it was learning the community psychology. But then obviously normally you're going to run into situations where as an imam, your ideals are fine, but you have to find something that's practical. What you learn in the books is not, you have to learn how to relate it over. And for me, I realized that the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ was the key. That was where I would find the answers for everything I needed. One of my teachers, he wrote a book specifically on that, and about how to relate the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ into your daily life. And that was just kind of, I didn't read the whole book, read some of it, but I knew that it has to be there because the level of emotional and psychological intelligence the Prophet ﷺ showed in various different situations with children, with elders, with his contemporaries, with enemies, with the hypocrites. I mean, you name it. Every single type of person that we would normally deal with on a daily basis or throughout our lifetime, the Prophet ﷺ did that. But he showed how to do it in the right way. And for me, that was the key thing, being able to relate the seerah or finding answers in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ for our daily problems.
That's beautiful. I remember, subhanAllah, you reminded me, Mufti Ibrahim, when I was working for MAS on the national level, subhanAllah, would be sitting in meetings and, some complex issues would come up either within the organization or within activism or what have you. And subhanAllah, whenever an issue would be raised, we had one of our most dedicated brothers, subhanAllah, he said, well, in the seerah, this is what happened, so this is how we'd approach it. And it would just blow my mind. It just come immediately. So subhanAllah, that's really amazing to be able to take our education and be able to apply it in that way and have that confidence in it too. Jazakumullah khair. And what about one of the highlights? Is there, you had a long journey as well. Do you have any highlights, nuggets of information or experiences or teachers that really sticks out in your mind, Mufti Ibrahim?
I think I was in the right place at the right time. The Darulum that we studied at, every single one of the teachers that were there, they kind of added to our cultivation, our tarbiyah. They all had something very, very unique. I'll give you an example. The main sheikh, the principal that was there, his name was Mullah Yusuf Mutalaf. He passed away last year.
Oh,
I had never seen anybody in my life who really cared about people like he did. He really, really cared about people. And one thing about students, sometimes students, to be honest, we can get on people's nerves, especially with our demands and sometimes just being lazy and whatever it was. But he would not tolerate any type of disrespect from anybody. I remember one time the chef over there, as cricket's the main sport there. So the chef, he was Indian, and India and Pakistan had played.
Oh man, we don't want to break out a fight in the community, guys. Be careful now.
India lost. India lost, and he was so upset because a lot of the Pakistani students, they were just kind of flaunting his face. So he made terrible food that day. It was really, really bad. It wasn't very edible. When he found out, he got so mad. He made him cook the entire meal over again, and he canceled class that day until the food was ready, and then we had our meal, our lunch, and not only that, there was another you have some like the teachers that are there that kind of oversee the classrooms and after the classes too, in the evening, making sure everyone kind of learns their lesson. So he was a very, very strict guy, and he had been serving that school for like 20 years. And he found out that Mohtheshum found out that he had somehow disrespected one of the students, and he kicked him out on the spot. He didn't care, he really cared about, the character of a person when you see how they treat those people that can do no harm to them at all. Like we can do nothing. We're completely, you can say, subjugated or whatever. But he really cared, and that was not just for us, for anybody. Whenever people would come, he was very careful about that. Another one of our teachers, Mufti Shafir Sahab, he's the one who taught us Sahih Bukhari and parts of Tirmidhi as well. He was very thorough. I've never seen anybody more thorough in their research than him. I mean, things that you would never even imagine, perspectives that you wouldn't have imagined, opinions that are completely on the fringes. He would bring everything, and he would stress the importance of that, because if you keep a one-track mind, you're just going to go there. It's easy that way. You can go deep into that one particular perspective, but if you're not looking at it from every single view, you can never relate Islam to your own life, and you can never relate Islam to the people around you either. And Islam just becomes, it just becomes a customary religion. Our academics become just a bunch of traditions that, you read about in books, but it doesn't really have any any type of relevance in the lives of people. So they all the teachers that were there, I'm sure they were handpicked, but they were all there for they all contributed to us in a very unique way, and that's, I mean, there's just plenty of them, for to end.
MashaAllah. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. Always our teachers have a fadl over us. I mean, that's amazing. That's really beautiful, alhamdulillah. And that seems to be a common thread what everybody's sharing. It's, you know, the experiences that involving the teachers, the people, the place in which we lived that has shaped us. So I think that's very special. Jazakumullah khairan. Dr. Rose, how do you hope to influence others with your knowledge?
Yeah, it's a great question. I have a couple different foci for the people like I hope to inspire along my path of learning and teaching. One is I teach at California Lutheran University in Thousand Oaks, nearby the valley. And so my primary audience there is almost all non-Muslim American students. I have like 1 or 2 Muslim students in every class. But first of all, I'm one of the only Muslim faculty members, the only female Muslim faculty members at a church affiliated institution. And most of the students, it's a very diverse ethnic population ethnically, but religiously. We have a small MSA, a very small group of Muslim students, and even smaller American Muslims within that community. So first and foremost, because of my training in Western academia, I see myself as being a good bridge to the non-Muslim community within the US and other Western contexts. And so that's my first focus, is I think I could say I've become a very good teacher in teaching about Islam to people who have little to no background. And just to, not just to dispel the stereotypes, that was like my initial approach, but is further developed to just really teaching critical thinking, reading, writing skills to young people, and how to think more openly about the world. And for them, learning about Islam in my class is a way that they can learn these critical thinking skills. When they realize that, oh my God, Muslims are not like what we've heard about, it makes them question. And I tell them this is, when we learn about Muslims in the United States or Muslims around the world, this also is similar to other minority communities within the US, and how America and how mainstream media perceives minority communities within the US. I really try to help students see the world from a very different perspective than often what they're brought up in, often very sheltered communities, because it is a private institution and some of them did grow up in quite sheltered families and societies. So my job is to open up their minds to the possibilities that are around them, and to think about the world in a global perspective. The second foci, the second group that I'm really interested in working with, and I do work with, is Muslim women specifically. I do see a huge disparity gap within Islam in terms of women being given their proper roles within Islam, in terms of leadership within the Muslim community, in terms of being recognized for their scholarship, for their spiritual and academic leadership, intellectual leadership, these sorts of things. So to give you an example, like last September, I was a residential scholar at New Mexico. Dar al-Islam is a Muslim retreat center in New Mexico. And I was able to be the residential scholar to give some classes and Quranic reflections with a lovely group of women. And that experience really highlighted the fact that I love working with Muslim women specifically. And Muslim women need to see other Muslim women in leadership roles who have gained the knowledge and who do have the background with Islam, to be able to interpret and approach it and think about how Islam can work in our lives and how we can reinterpret it in ways that make sense. And so I really, and I have these goals in the future, inshallah, to work more towards Muslim women's empowerment and leadership in the community, to really bring together Muslim women leaders that already, who already are working towards this, and then to help inspire other young women to also become leaders within the community in whatever capacity they're interested in or they're able to.
Jazakumullah khair. That's beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Rose. Very wonderful. And how about you, Amira? How do you hope to influence others with your knowledge? I know that, alhamdulillah, you were, teaching Arabic at the masjid and inspiring others. So what do you hope to do?
Yeah, I still definitely feel like, Naseeha had talked earlier about how once you start learning, you realize that there's just so much more to learn. So I do feel like at this point, I'm like just barely touched dipped my toe in the water, barely, like just a drop. So I think the way that I would hope to be able to, or what I'd like to share with others is like take whatever steps you can take to begin your journey, whatever that looks like, whether that's online, whether that's just whatever you can do. It's worth it to start. It's worth it to do something, to put effort towards something. So I think that's the first thing I would like to say. And then the second thing is that I have found that, you know, I have been teaching just the Arabic class. I have a very small group of 5, mashallah, amazing students. They're the best students in the world. They really are. They're so dedicated, mashallah. And honestly, like, they're about as good as I am at this point. Like, we're still, you know, we meet weekly to read together. And at this point, it's just like, it's like being with, you know, almost like with colleagues or something, you know, just going through work together. But I always say, you know, sometimes it's the drive to the valley, you know, this, that, and sometimes it can feel hard or there's effort there. But subhanAllah, after class every single week, that was the best part of my week, like every single time, without a doubt, to just be able to take like something that I felt like was a gift to me and just be able to just share even whatever little bit. And I am no expert on anything, but just to be able to share even a little bit has been so fulfilling in a way where I'm just like, thank you to my students for, you know, giving me that opportunity. So I'll reward them for their efforts, and inshallah, like, I want to continue doing that. I want to learn more so that I can continue to just to do that, because it's amazing.
Alhamdulillah. I'm so glad, Amir, that you, you know, that you love it so much and that you have that intention and passion of learning and then giving back. I think that's so special. Alhamdulillah. May Allah reward you. That's awesome. And how about you, Naseeha? How do you hope to influence others with your knowledge?
Well, I mean, I basically kind of like what Professor Aslan and Amira have said, kind of like giving back what we have learned. One of the things that, I mean, everything that I've been learning in my PhD, I wish there was some way where I could like package it and like give it to the community. And so I think that hopefully I want to figure out ways to do that, and maybe build some curriculum, build some ways to like have people critically think about topics that they don't normally think about at all, but that really actually affect them and they don't know it. So things like that. I'm still in the process of this PhD, so I'm not like right now I'm in my qualification year, so I'm doing my exams inshallah soon. So make dua, everybody.
Inshallah.
But inshallah in the future, I want to, the idea of accessibility and like bridging the gap between what we learn in academia and what's in our communities, and that's basically it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, inshallah, you're going to be such an amazing, you are already, and inshallah be such an amazing contribution, Naseeha, inshallah. Inshallah, soon to be Doctora Naseeha, inshallah. That's absolutely wonderful. How about you, Mufti Ibrahim? How do you hope to influence others with your knowledge?
I'm not even there yet. Others, I mean, I thought maybe asking how I would like to benefit myself would probably be a good start. Others,
please.
That's still a long ways to go.
Well, you're in the process, so like it or not, you are influencing, you know, yeah. So you can answer that however you like, inshallah.
Sure. I mean, I guess for me, what is important is kind of banking off the previous speakers, Amira, Naseeha, and Rose, really connecting people to the intellectual heritage of Islam. You know, a lot of times when we were growing up, when we learn about Islam, it's like, okay, besides the prayers, then once you learn the basics, it was still just a built upon, you know, like, okay, the sunnahs of this or that. So you're just like enumerating different things, but never really the important aspects of, you know, believing Allah. Then why do we believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why is it important, you know, as a Muslim, especially a youngster? So these are things that we were never really taught when we were younger, and alhamdulillah, through the rise of many of our you know, elder scholars like Sheikh Hamza Yusuf, Shakir, and many other scholars, they really kind of bridge that gap and show the importance that and really show that it was there. For a lot of people, Islam was just, at least in my generation growing up here in the valley, I mean, religion was very it was very dry, you know. There wasn't much to it, and now when you see that it's there's a lot more substance to it. I mean, just like Amir is saying, the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. There's just so much more. and the deeper that you go, the more of an abyss it seems like, because this is so much variety, so much depth in the knowledge and even in the understanding, and a lot of it is just experience. You know, one of our teachers, he's been teaching Tirmidhi for like 20 some odd, 30 some odd years, and he's like every single year he learns something new. You know, so that I mean, it's just, there's just no end to it, and that's important, because when there is that type of depth, you value it, and that's what I really hope for myself, to kind of bring that into my life, my own understanding, and hopefully by default to other people as well, inshallah.
Inshallah, that's beautiful. Jazakumullah khair. That's beautiful. It's the gift that keeps on giving. That's what it seems like. You know, I really appreciate, wallahi, all of you sharing your journeys, your advices, your wisdom, and I hope to close, inshallah, each of you, if you can share, and I'll start with you, Dr. Rose. What advice would you give to those wishing to start on this path? Some people, you know, they feel overwhelmed, and I've heard this before. Like, I don't even know where to start. Like, what do I do? So, what would be your advice, Dr. Rose?
Yeah, alhamdulillah. So Ustaz Lobna, first I want to commend you on the people you invited for the panel. First of all, I love the gender balance, and then also having people from very different backgrounds to show the diversity of paths you can actually take. You can go the path, you know, to become a Muslim scholar and leader of the community. You can become an academic, and you can pursue a, you know, civilian life, right? I don't know how to call it, Amira, but also pursue your Islamic and Arabic studies on the side too, so you don't have to pursue it solely. It was my choice because of, I had a number of privileges. I was able to get scholarships and funding along the way that enabled me to pursue my studies for many, many years. All these people were funding me, universities and institutions. Not everyone's so lucky. So I'd say the path that I'm on is probably not for most people. And I also don't recommend a PhD unless you really want to sacrifice most of your life, about a decade of your life to that.
Don't tell Naseeha, she's watching. No.
sorry, Naseeha.
I'm teasing.
There are ways to do what I'm doing.
I'm quitting now.
PhD. Yes, sorry, it's too late for you. You're already there. But you know, for ordinary people who are not going to pursue their PhD or master's, any degree in Islam, really, you know, take Amira's class at ISWB, you know, just to start with Arabic. Travel as much as you can, meet Muslims of different backgrounds. I remember going to Sarajevo when I went to the Jewish Muslim conference in Bosnia, in Sarajevo, Bosnia, and traveling around Bosnia, visiting some of the grave sites, but also learning about the communities there. And then Friday night, you see all the Muslims heading to the discotheque in short skirts, and I was shocked. I hadn't been exposed to that kind of Muslim society, and it was really great to see at the same time. Muslims are not all the same, so traveling to different places that are Muslim majority, Muslim societies, Muslim communities, seeing how Muslims live, speaking to Muslims who are different than you, learning about other kinds of Muslims, so learning about your own tradition if you're Sunni, but also learning about Shia Muslims, Ibadi Muslims, Sufi Muslims, widening your perspective. I'm not saying to learn about them to adopt their practices, but to broaden your mind and realize that there are many ways of being Muslim, and that would enable you to become a more pluralistic and tolerant person. Because as Mufti Ibrahim was talking about, the Prophet Muhammad was very emotionally intelligent in the way he interacted with everyone around him. So if we use him as the model, we can really use that to explore all different paths of knowledge and learning.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Rose. That's really beautiful advice. Jazakumullah khairan. And Amira, what would your advice be?
Well, I would say, well, I said earlier, I think if it's worth it to start, and with whatever you can, whatever little bit it is, it's worth it to do something, to do anything. But I think my advice would be to find a teacher, to find a program, to find something that to find the people that will surround you and keep you accountable for that, to have some sort of regular plan or program or curriculum to follow. So that, because it's just so easy if you're doing it on, you know, on the side, to get lost in all the rest of just the life. And that can really get in the way. So I would highly recommend, like, find a teacher, if possible, get in a room with people after, you know, all this is done, inshallah, because there's a lot of barakah in that, I think, and So yeah, I guess that would be my advice. And there's a lot of resources, and they're continuing to like more and more local resources are popping up. Obviously ISWV has a lot of programs. If you look, a little further in, greater Los Angeles area, IOK, like there are local programs. And then there's, if one of those isn't the right fit for you, like there's a lot online now that's, actually has, curriculum and things to follow through, and real opportunity to connect with people to guide you on that journey. So that would be my recommendation is just find something, even if it's just one night a week or, once a month or something, but find a program or a teacher, inshallah.
Yeah.
That'd be my advice.
Thank you, Amira. Yeah. Say that again. What was the last thing?
That would be at least my advice.
Yeah, no, and that's very helpful because again, as Dr. Aslan, she mentioned, everybody, on our panel has, stepped into this love at different points in their life and to different, they had different journeys, everybody. So, and that's representative of all of us over here watching you guys. And that's kind of inspiring to know that some are given the opportunity or have the ability to step out and go out and overseas, and others, starting in their own backyard and searching online will be an opening, but definitely studying in groups as barakah. So I really appreciate both of your advices. And Naseeha, how about you? What would be your advice for those wishing to start on this journey, not really knowing?
I think everybody, Dr. Rose and Amira said everything that you should be doing, like just finding a program. I think that the first thing that you might want to do is just start with Arabic, because if you start with Arabic, that's like there are so many good programs, and people who are in like undergrad programs right now, there are language programs at your school probably. So just like avail yourself of those programs and start with Arabic, and make the intention. Inshallah, Allah will fulfill your intention. And the dua, Rabbi zidni ilman, just say that and really like ask for it. Inshallah, Allah will grant your dua.
Such a simple dua, beautiful. That gave me goosebumps. Alhamdulillah. It's beautiful. There's something beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in seeking knowledge. There's so much that we can gain from it, and indulging in the Arabic language can open up so many doors. So that's wonderful advice. Naseeha, I appreciate that. You're giving us Naseeha.
Oh, God. I knew that was coming.
I have to say it at some point. You know that.
I knew
right?
it.
And Mufti Ibrahim, can you give us advice to those wishing to start on this path? What would you tell them?
I think it depends on what your aim is. If you're not planning on going abroad, you just want to do something that's locally. I think Arabic is definitely the number one choice. That's where you want to begin, because that's the language. When our teachers say al-lugha miftah, right? The language is the key to the knowledge. So Arabic is a key. So definitely Arabic if you're not planning to go abroad. And if you are planning to go abroad, I would say follow the path of Sheikh Suhail. To figure yourself out first here, make sure you've got yourself taken care of. And then if you still have the desire, you still have the urge, and you still want to go, and that passion is still there burning, then by all means go.
That's beautiful. Jazakumullah khairan, Mufti Ibrahim. Jazakumullah khairan, Dr. Rose Aslan, Sister Amira Mohtheshum, Sister Naseeha Hussain, and Mufti Ibrahim Qureshi. Really, really appreciate all of your time. I know it's getting late. I appreciate all of your sharing your personal pathways to knowledge and inspiring all of us. I know I got inspired tonight, and I hope all of us watching here takes away something that hopefully takes them not only through the end of Ramadan, but really, whet our appetite really for just learning, inshallah. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward all of you. Really, really appreciate all of your contributions tonight to our esteemed panel. And I appreciate all of you listening. Jazakumullah khairan. I know it got late. I appreciate all of you hanging in there. Hopefully all of you benefited. Thank you everybody for listening. And I hope you have a blessed night. All of you, we'll see you next week. And of course, back with Sheikh Suhail tomorrow, inshallah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.